Hey guys, it's Graham. What's cracking? And I've been thinking about what I'm doing with organization on the channel, and I know I've mentioned in community posts over the last couple of months that I was getting ready to start up a comic channel, and I was going to do more comic book videos just over there. I've decided that I don't care. Like, my whole point with doing YouTube is just to share books that I like, and dividing the comic book stuff from the regular book stuff. I could do that, but like, how far down a rabbit hole do I really want to go with comic book content? Any time that I spend making like really curated content is time that I'm not spending writing or drawing. And my objective is not to become a YouTuber by any stretch of the imagination. It's just to keep doing what I've been doing. So I'm just going to focus on putting that content back over here instead of putting off so many of the good books that I'm reading and reviewing them in real time. On that note, last year when I did my best of yearbooks post on Upstream, not on the Cracker Stack, but over on Upstream Reviews, the book that I put up was, well, one of them was the Junkyard Joe Deluxe Edition, which is it came out in November, and it's just fantastic. It's bigger. You get a bigger look at the artwork and everything. And there was a commenter who asked if something to the effect of like whether Junkyard Joe was a ripoff of G.I. Robot from DC Comics. This is a character that I had heard of, but I didn't know anything about it, and I didn't really have an answer for the guy. I told him I would look into it, and then suddenly here we are, all these months later have gone by, and voila. I'm regularly finding myself in these duh moments as I think about research that I need to do or stuff that I need to look into, and then I remember that I've got a subscription to X, and that comes with access to Grok, and I can just ask an AI these questions and stress test the results later. And so finally today I was like, duh, why don't I ask this question? Because I was asking Grok, like, what comic books do I have that are coming out this week? And it gave me a list, and one of them was a Ghost Machine book. And I was like, oh yeah, that reminds me, I need to ask about Junkyard Joe and G.I. Robot. It was able to give me an overview of the history of G.I. Robot as a character, and then compare it to Junkyard Joe with the similarities and the distinctions. Mainly because I was curious about the timeline of Junkyard Joe's inception. The creator, Geoff Johns, did work for DC before working for Image and starting the imprint Mad Ghost, which later became Ghost Machine, blah, blah, blah. But he created the character Junkyard Joe. However, there's some lack of clarity in the timeline. It sounds like he might have been on the verge of producing a G.I. Robot story for DC when he was working there in the late 2010s. That he wasn't able to bring to fruition before he left the company. And I'm going to copy and paste all of the details that Grok gave me in the description of this video so you can read it in detail if you really want to. It also gave me a list of comics to look up so that I could read the original G.I. Robot stuff. But you can see the similarities between Junkyard Joe as a character and G.I. Robot as a character, which really stands as an homage. Like, I don't think that Geoff Johns was trying to hide the fact that he was making a character similar to this, but he took it in a different direction and built his own thing with it. And then it also highlights like I said, the distinctions between the two. Junkyard Joe and G.I. Robot are extremely similar in a lot of ways, but Junkyard Joe is more of a character. This can be said so far of pretty much all of the Ghost Machine characters in the Unnamed War series, the unknown heroes. Kanigher, for example, is a little bit of a combination of like the Hulk and Ghost Rider. He's got this radiation-fueled power inside him that he can't completely control. He's got to wear an apparatus that helps him keep the radiation inside of him, but he's able to pull these boron rods out of the apparatus and release his fully charged radioactive powered self. People around him can get hurt if he's not careful with it. Obviously, if he's fighting bad guys, like, he wants to hurt him, and that's no big deal. but he's got to be tactical with it. When he pulls the boron rods out and he ends up looking like his fully charged Geiger self, there's a bit of a radioactive Ghost Rider effect to it. You can see his skeleton through his skin, and instead of there being orange flames, there's green radioactive energy coming off of it. If you wanted to say that, like, okay, he's doing a Hulk type character, he's doing a Ghost Rider type character, yeah, he's kind of doing that. You can say very easily that the Unnamed War, I keep getting the two mixed up, like the Unknown series and the Unnamed War. No, I'm getting that wrong. Anyway, whatever. I'm driving. I don't care. These are characters that are their own thing, but there are very obvious, we'll say, like fingerprints and genealogy of other familiar properties in them, to the point where it's like, okay, I can tell that you scrubbed the serial numbers off of Fallout for this setting. And there's a little bit of, like I said, Ghost Rider in the aesthetic, and Hulk in the building of the powers. But all of these things come together to create a unique character that has a lot of attributes that I like. He's a loner in a wasteland. He would very much like to control his powers. He's become cynical because he lost his family. He's a reader. He's got a dog that he takes care of. And he's got a couple of tag-alongs that he's kind of indifferent to, but he comes to rely on them along the way. You can tell what his arc is building towards. He's a man who has made enemies, and he's got to deal with those enemies as he's also learning to kind of rebuild his own humanity in the wake of this nuclear war that claimed so much of his life. Redcoat is another character in this same series who arguably has some fingerprints of Captain America on him, in that he's a throwback. He's from a previous time. But what are the differences? Well, he's from the Revolutionary War instead of World War II. He's British instead of American. He's immortal, and there's not necessarily like a super soldier element to him. He's not super strong or anything. He just can't be killed. Or rather, you can kill him, but he'll get better. And he didn't go into the ice. He's been awake this entire time. So he's sort of a man out of time, but not really. Like, he's been along for the gradual change of society as it has happened in America. And now they're kind of meshing him with another character called the Northerner. Redcoat number 11 just came out today. And they're going to have this Revolutionary era British soldier go up against a Civil War era Union soldier. And they're going to cross paths in some way that is meaningful for the Unnamed War, or the Unknown War. Sorry, I'm going to drive myself nuts getting those two mixed up. These homages are fine. I would also like to see a little bit more infusion of original ideas as they go. So far, the Trinity, we'll say, if there is such a thing for these series, the Trinity is Kanigher, Junkyard Joe, and Redcoat. The Northerner is supposed to be a central figure in this. We've had a one-off book. It wasn't released in individual issues. It was just a single graphic novel called The Blizzard that's part of this series, and there's a cameo at the end, we'll say, with Redcoat. And then supposedly this summer, the Junkyard Joe series is starting up again, but we're also getting a new character in a series called First Ghost, which is something to do with a ghost that lives at the White House. So there are going to be other characters popping in on this series that fill out the timeline. Some of this stuff is going to feel familiar if they keep going with the way that they're doing it, but they're not necessarily trying to put a mustache on Captain America and Iron Man and Black Widow and have these very familiar, like, off-brand versions of established characters. They're just their own characters that feel very familiar because they'll have characteristics that are an homage to other established things. Like, the stories that they're telling with these characters that have these attributes are fantastic and unique and excellent. Like the Albert Einstein story with Redcoat. the first two volumes of Geiger that were so excellent. Like, I've got the individual issues for Geiger Volume 2. I've got the hardcover of Geiger 1 and the paperback. Like, I'm collecting these books. Other books, I'm just buying them and reading as they come out. Like, whereas with these Unnamed War books, I'm getting individual issues and the collected editions just because, like, I'm enjoying having them. They're so good, and I'm really enjoying how these characters are all appearing in each other's stories and coming together for the complete saga. Very interested in seeing what they do with it from here. So in a roundabout way, but also expanding on that, like, I wanted to answer that question. Like, Junkyard Joe, in a lot of ways, is an homage, so far as I understand it, to G.I. Robot. Not a ripoff, but I just get the impression, and I could be wrong about this, if there's more elaboration that comes from a Geoff Johns interview, I'd like to see it. But I get the impression that Geoff Johns was writing a story he was very passionate about that might have featured G.I. Robot before he left DC. He said, well, there's a lot that I can do with this story, and I can fit it into this other story that I want to do, and I can change some elements along the way, and make a character that is familiar and similar to G.I. Robot, but it'll still be my own character. Like, that sort of process with creativity is something that I understand, being a writer on my own and having had, several disparate ideas that I later wanted to put into a shared literary universe, we'll say. I've got some of my books that are going to overlap with each other. I've got a crossover series that I'm going to do later on. Even the engine stuff is eventually going to meet up with other stories that I've written. The hero next door is going to have a role to play in that. It might seem incongruous, but if I set it up right and stick the landing, like, I've got ways of making these stories work with these characters. And sometimes even characters that I create, they're going to seem similar to other characters that I like. I've dressed up as Skullduggery Pleasant and Ghost Rider for Halloween in different years, and just because I like the aesthetic of a pyromaniac skeleton, I just think it looks cool. And then later, as I was getting ready to write Graveheart in Howling Wilderness, I was like, well, wait a minute. What if I took this and this and this, and I was using these established elements from the Engines of Liberty world, and I was able to just create a character that was a pyromaniac skeleton, and I could make that work without me trying to, put a Ghost Rider in my story. Like, I could just have my own pyromaniac skeleton. Okay, cool, let's do that. And I did. And, Graveheart is his own character. He's got a curse. He's got his fire powers. They work for a certain reason. It's not that he's out there to collect souls for the devil or whatever. It's just, with elements that I had originally put into that series without intending to go in that direction, I was able to go in that direction and make my own thing. It's cool. It's what creativity allows you to do. We need more of it. So, long story short, number one, I'm going to just put my comic book videos back on this channel, do my own thing over here. And number two, I don't think Junkyard Joe is a ripoff of G.I. Robot. He's an homage to G.I. Robot, but he is also his own thing. And you can check the full details in the description for more info on that. Drive safe. See you out there.